So one of the things that I like to do here at Vondelpeet Studios is to play up this idea that Australia is absolutely hell if you're an INFP, that it's just not the right country to live in if you're an INFP. You know, it's a bit of an insensitive country. It's a country where you're expected to kill crocodiles in every corner and, you know, have no sensitivity at all. And while there are some true aspects to that, I thought I'd talk a bit about how I think INFPs cope here in Australia, and especially like the fact that a lot of the INFP friends that I've got here are quite similar to me in that there's a lot of dry humour and sarcasm used and a lot of storytelling and quirkiness. And it's this sort of eccentric aspect of being an INFP that actually goes quite well here in Australia. You know, a lot of people think of Australia as this really laid back country, and some Australians are really laid back, especially after I was living in Japan and I came back to Melbourne. I was like, oh, Australians are very laid back and I like it. And Australians are very nice and friendly overall, and it's done in a fairly authentic way, which is really nice. If you come to Australia, I think there's a lot of quite good hospital service. Hospital service? Customer service or hospitality, not hospital service. Fucking hell. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that what I've noticed with other INFPs that I've known, male or female, who are Australian, is, you know, it's partially because maybe they realize growing up here that it's, you know, you can't really express your vulnerability in a very open way, which is not the INFP way anyway, but there's a real sort of sarcasm, dry sense of humor and irony that goes down really well here in Australia. And if you're like a bit quirky, if you're a bit, I don't know, it's just like in Australia, we like outsiders, actually, like the underdog. The whole underdog thing goes down really well here. And INFPs can be really good at using self-deprecation to endear themselves to others. And I notice this more when I'm traveling overseas. Usually I avoid any country overseas which has too many Australians, but when I do meet them, I go into an Aussie mode that I quite like. You know, I can very easily, and this is only something that I sort of developed in my 20s, I can very easily, through a certain soft, humorous sort of INFP behavior that I put on, you can get a bunch of those the stereotypes of Australians will come and hug you or whatever, especially if they're drunk. And I also know how to deal with aggressive Australians as well. I remember I was in Tokyo and I was with my INTP friend, and it was so annoying. I was about 9 months into living in Japan, and of course you get used to no one ever being aggressive and lots of lovely strangers, and it's very typical that the one time someone gets aggressive when I'm in Japan, it's another Australian in a 7-Eleven. I think he shoved into my friend. We said excuse me and he started threatening both of us, and it got me really angry and sort of made me sort of puff up my chest a little bit. But whatever I said, I can't remember what I said, but I got him off our back. I was like, I can't remember what I said to him. So it's not a very good story. I knew that just show enough aggression without escalating. And that was sort of part of being going to an old boys school here in Australia. I think you learn how to de-escalate conflict, but without appearing too sensitive. And because INFPs are pretty good at hiding their feelings and having a well of feelings all hidden, that can go down very well in Australia. It makes you, because Australians again don't like too much emotional displays. Because of the tall poppy syndrome issue here, no one likes anyone seeming too big for their boots. INFPs are pretty good at not coming off as too brash and too braggy. I guess it can happen, but for the most part it's the opposite. INFPs come across as fairly humble, not wanting to blow their own trumpet too much in general. People might go and say somewhere like Japan's also a terrible place for INFPs because of all the rules and bureaucracy. It's even better for INFPs because there's all these like really irrational rules. There's very rational rules here in Australia. Like Australia's like Germany in that way, but Japan's got all of these irrational rules and like everything's got like layers to it in Japan and all over Asia, but Japan's got their own version of it. And I think if you're an INFP, I've seen Japanese INFPs be expert at this, knowing that every rule can be broken in a certain way in Japan, as long as you play your cards there's so much nuance to it, and you kind of really pays to have an INFP or INTP, like highly nuanced brain to work out their complex social structure. Again, with Australia, we've got the British version of that, with all the, Britain's got this legacy, I guess, of trying to maintain social harmony, and they have to, they also love their eccentrics in Britain and got a weird sense of humour, and they don't really show their emotions. And Australia's basically got that, where you've got to just find other ways to express yourself in Anglo culture. So yeah, those are some reasons why I think it's not actually that bad being an INFP in Australia. Maybe I'm just telling myself that. But I think there's some truth in what I'm saying, especially when it comes to like, you know, these really tough ESTJ manager men that you get here in Australia. You know, if I meet an ESTJ at a party, they're the type who might be a bit uncomfortable because of their FE demon, I think it's called, and they'll be drinking a beer and they'll sense that I'm an INFP male Australian, and they'll be like really quick to be like, hey, how you doing, mate? Good to see you again, mate. Oh, I've actually got a lot of anxiety, and they'll just start pouring out all of this stuff. But anyway, I think I'm getting at something in this video. The thing is, you can grab any personality type and go and say why they can, you know, fit into whatever culture, because, you know, everyone has to adapt to their circumstances. But it's, I really think there is something in Australia where, particularly the whole love of the underdog and the whole introverted feeling thing, which, you know, the stereotype is that that's like really sensitive and soft and overly emotional, but in reality it's more about hidden emotions. It can work pretty well in a country like Australia. Obviously I do well in Britain, you know, I'm a lot more comfortable in England. There's something about me that, well, I'm still a bit too expressive even for Australia, whereas Britain will have a quirkiness and like you can't complain too much in Britain either, but you can at least analyze a situation a bit more in Britain. Whereas in Australia, they don't really like the analysis either. You know, if you start philosophizing about something, you know, a typical Australian might go and say, you know, well, what about meat pies? Meat pies are great. And then they'll sort of end the conversation on the meat pie issue. Anyway, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I'll see you next time. And I mean time as in TIME, not the herb.